Hi, hello, and welcome back to Evercell. This will be the ninth part of With a Card Up His Sleeve, What Could He Achieve? And this will be the second part of the 15th chapter. They converted 3 blocks away from the casino. Batman looking like a grim shadow, his usual emo self, but Jason knew the cracks were there. Nightwing stood tightly wound-spring. Jason decided he got to be a little bit of an ass and snapped his fingers. Dick had jumped and did 2 flips in a row while moving backwards. When he caught sight of Jason, he barked his teeth at him like some sort of feral animal. The fuck was up with him? The brat was radiating such an indignant fury when he was told to shut up during his temper tantrum in the cave at being subjected to such unorthodox mission. Boo fucking who. Jason had to listen to it and he didn't feel charitable at all. Christ, spoiled kids these days. Blondie was on a whirlwind of nervous energy and barely contained its spark. And Signal, who was surprisingly quiet, his street-level instincts on high alert, no Cass, thank God. For once, he was the stable one. It was strong if off-kilter. The debris in the cave had been an absolute nightmare, and everyone was feeling the after effects. The kid had nearly punched Bruce twice. Batman grunted once, and that was their cue. After much deliberation, he was not part of the plan, and instead was backup. They scattered like a flock of birds after hearing gunshot. The Gotham pigeons just did not fucking care anymore. They ate dead bodies, for Christ's sake. They liked the ice the most. And that had been a whole other situation. Alright, Nightwing whispered, his voice low over the comms. Permanent clear. We go in through the surface entrance. Robin, you take the ventilation shaft. Spoiler, follow my lead. Signal, provide overwatch and comm relay from the adjacent building. Red Hood, clear out the red exit. Primary escape road. Disengrounded. Clear out the rear. Standard. Kill if necessary. It's kind of fun. But tonight, the pit wasn't singing. It was a dull ache. He was still rattled by Bruce's pathetic display, by the whispers that followed when he walked in Crime Alley, and by that uneasy feeling that Gotham was shifting under his feet, and he was playing catch-up. He reached the staff loading bay, the scent of stale cigarettes and cheap disinfectant hanging heavy in the air. The door was locked, but the mechanism grounded under his crowbar. He slipped inside, his gun sweeping the room. Empty. Too empty. A high-pitched whip sounded behind him, then another and another. Fast, too fast. He spun, his gun up, but it was already too late. Something sticky and incredibly strong slammed into his arms, pinning him to the sides. Then his legs. He was bound, rigid, unable to move. His head was the only thing he could shift. He felt something poke his neck. His vision went blurry. Fucking shit, this was nearly the same drug as last time. The dealer. That fucker had drugged him. He felt angry, the pit rising up, and then he felt nothing at all. When he came to, they were in the private room. A poker table sat in the center. Robin, Nightwing, Spoiler, Signal were all bounded next to him. From his periphery, figures emerged. Too young. Way too damn young. Kate, Mira, Avery, and Ella, the Gala people, as Batman had called them, dismissing them as mere flunkies, idiots. These kids were anything but flunkies. They worked like a well-oiled machine, efficient and terrifying. He tried to snarl, a hot green fury bubbling in his gut, but before he could even form the first syllable, Mira was in front of him, a small, knowing smirk on her lips. She held up a clear syringe, its contents a viscous, unnerving yellow, like piss. "Don't even try it, redhead," she said, her voice soft but with an edge of steel. "We got something for that little temper of yours. We put it down for a week, but it's not fun waking up." She tapped the syringe. He gritted his teeth, the pit rolling, demanding he break free, but the cold threat of forced sedation, of being utterly vulnerable, held him in check. He shut up. One of them, Ella, he thought, came closer. Wow, he actually listened. Tim said he would. Tim. The name hit Jason with all force of a punch. Tim said he would. His muscles already tense from the bending clenched tighter. Why the fuck did Tim think it would work? Huh? Tim. God, it was obvious, wasn't it? The dealer. The kid Bruce was so obsessed with. The kid who outmaneuvered him. Tim. Of fucking course. He was probably short for some pretentious ass name like Timothy. Fucking bastard. He needed the Oracle. Their comms were dead. Just like dickheads had been during the confrontations. Jammed and shorted out. Tim's work. Why the hell was he so obsessed with the kid's name? It tickled at his memory. He didn't know why, but Tim was supposed to be dead. God, had he been shot the kid before or something? "Boss is out with Versailles Lieutenant," Kate announced, his voice devoid of emotions, like he was reporting inventory. "Said we should hold these guys until he gets back." "A waste of time," Jason growled, his voice muffled by the gag, but the anger still clear. Tim out with a lunatic? What the hell was going on in this city, and why the hell did Jason not know? He wasn't just a red helmet, he was a player, a major one. The kids stood around them, contemplating. "What do we do with them?" Ivory asked, his gaze lingering on Spoiler. Her hand was bandaged. Blondie clearly hadn't gone down easily. "Boss said no permanent damage," Mira said, tapping her chain thoughtfully. "But he didn't say anything about roughing them up a little." Ella giggled, a surprisingly innocent sound. "Yeah, it's been a rough week after all. We deserve some fun." The words "fun," roughing them up, landed like ice picks in Jason's gut. Memories of his death, bound and tortures at Jaker's hands, screamed at him. The cold sweat broke out in his brow. He could see, but he knew the flicker of alarm in Dick's eyes, the tightening of Damien's jaw. They all knew. They knew what fun could mean. These were kids. None of them looked older than 18, some barely old enough to drive. Yet they spoke of torture like a casualness that chilled him to the bone. This wasn't just a gang. This was something twisted, something bred by Gotham's darkest corners. "Don't you dare," Jason snarled, his voice a rattled shout, the pit rising in desperate primal fear. Don't you dare! Mira looked at him, her eyes unblinking. You really want to push it, Red Hood? He stared back, refusing to break. He saw the flicker of recognition in her eyes. Maybe she remembered him, years ago, when he was just Jason Todd. Kay sighed. Boss said no unnecessary complications, and he definitely said nothing about extended interrogations. His gaze swept over the bound heroes, a hint of something calculating in his young eyes. He said they're probably more temporal than they're worth. Just send a message. A warning, then? Ivor mused. Mira nodded, a touch of disappointment in her voice. Yeah, Boss wouldn't like it if we went too far. He gets particular about collateral. They untied them, briskly, efficiently. The gags were removed. Jason sucked in a ragged breath, rubbing his raw wrists. He was sure that the demon brat would attack, but he stayed down. Spoiler had bared her teeth at them. They're bad. She had a strong bite. Next time, Kate said, his voice flat and a little bored, don't come snooping where you don't belong. The real owl is in your playground, Batman, and you're not welcome. With that, they fucking melted back into the shadows dramatically, leaving them alone in the room. There was one door out, leading to a balcony. It was a clear dismissal, and while his king crawled and begged him to leave, Jason just stood here. He felt a profound unease settle over him. He faced down worse, far worse, but these kids, they're different. They operated with a detachment, a pragmatic ruefulness that mirrored his own darkest impulses, but probably without the underlying drama that filled his. But that wasn't true, was it? They had grown up in Gotham, probably on the crime alley at that. It couldn't have been easy. And the detachment wasn't really uncaring. It was false bravado, just faked very well. Suddenly, they weren't ruthless torturers, but kids who had gotten mixed up with the wrong crowd and found a way to survive, a way to thrive in spite of it. They met Bruce at the same rooftop. He looked like he was the one who was kidnapped instead of them. The bastard. We need a gentler approach, Jason growled, his voice raw to Dick. This wasn't a head-on fight. It's a cancer, and it will be metastatic. You just can't cut it out. Bruce remained silent, his face grim. Dick looked at him, surprised by the unexpected shift in his tone. Then Duke, who had been quiet for the ordeal, spoke up, his voice calm, resolute. Look, I don't give a shit what you guys do with the dealer. That's your business, but I'm not getting involved. He looked directly at Bruce and blew out a breath. Satyria, he helped me out once, got me and a few others out of a bad spot with some black market organ harvesters. The kid's voice came faster. He didn't even ask for anything, he just helped. So I'm not gonna stick my nose where it doesn't belong. The kid had withheld information from Bruce about Satyria. Jason felt almost sorry for him. Bruce opened his mouth, but the kid decided to use his powers and he vanished into the shadows. Batman's jaw hung open, like he had thought that Duke would do this. It took a second, but then it closed with an audible click. Jason watched it all with a grudging respect welling up inside him. Duke had a clear line and a clear mind. Well, as clear as anyone who tried to fight crime in Gotham could be. He understood Gotham's street codes and understood the unsaid depths. He went back to his safe house, not bothering to go to the cave and listening to the no doubt disastrous sit rep that would follow. He stripped off his armor, the collar feeling heavy and useless. Something was happening in Gotham. Something fundamental was shifting, and the birds and the bats, for all the power, for all the rules, felt disturbingly behind the curve. POV: The Dealer. It had been 3 days, and yet all Tim could think about was the absolute feeling of dread that had emerged when the bat had tracked him down. He was being so pathetic. He spent the last 3 days avoiding this topic through sheer stubbornness and willful ignorance. He didn't want to think about the gleam in Batman's eyes, scarily similar to the looks he often wore on patrol. He didn't want to think about the date. He didn't want to think about Timothy Drake or shitty parents who left kids alone in Gotham in the middle of fucking spring. Breathe in, breathe out. Focus. His team would tell him to look at the positives. He had switched safe houses 4 times in the last 3 days, so the bats probably did not know where he was. He avoided the Royale too, and that would cost him later. But there were more pressing matters to attend to first. He had spent the last 72 hours productively. Believe it or not, he had finished putting the final touches to the contingencies for the parley between the Royale and Versailles just last night, before catching a few hours of shut-eye. He checked his watch. 26 minutes to go. Nico, 5 minutes. Tim's voice cut through the calm, crisp and detached, his breathing perfectly even, betraying none of the internal turmoil. On my way, boss. Nico's voice replied, a hint of his usual lazy sarcasm. Got a good suit on too, for a peaceful talk with mob boss, who probably wants to gut us. The easy way he spoke did not require a reply, giving Tim a reasonable excuse not to respond. Tim rarely engaged in banter with some of his less favorable employees, and just stopped responding to the conversation. But his team knew him well, and Nico simply gave Tim a way out. However, this time, Tim did reply. I'm already moving, slewing through the alleys, his pace picking up. Bring Robert too. Robert Henson would be necessary for this particular discussion. The meeting point was an abandoned trade center, a vast, cavernous space that echoed with every footstep. It had been abandoned for as long as Tim had been alive, and years before that. It might have been prosperous when Gotham relied on trade, and most of the ships coming into dock didn't carry drugs or weapons or humans. But that was ancient history. It had been a neutral gang territory for even longer, and the final gambit of the last Mafia war had ended here. It was poetic in a sense. This would mark the start of the real war, not the underhanded missions that occurred prior. Breathe in, breathe out, and try not to cough or gag when you inhale dust and smoke and the smell of Gotham Harbor. He observed the center. The door frame had the votive written in looping spring script. The letter FDC were carved elegantly on the entrance. Familiar. Divinities. Commercium. Devotion to family, wealth. Devotion to family, wealth, and trade. That was the only outstanding feature of the center. The main floor was in various state of depreciation. The dust and spiders hung around and seemed to stare holes into Tim's head as he walked inside. Now, the other remarkable feature of the center was that it was still standing. The building had been set for demolition, but had never actually been demolished. Moreover, it had been a center for many rogue and mob schemes over the years, and yet remained standing. A true survivor, or perhaps the building just had bad luck. Unfortunate enough to be abandoned, except by the underground, and unlucky enough to never be free from its fate. The air was thick with the scent of stagnant water and rusting metal. It was neutral ground, or as neutral as anything could be in Gotham. And despite all the building codes it violated, Tim liked it. The wide open space, the distant creak of unseen ships, the muted thump of the city, it all seemed to provide an unsettling sense of scale, a reminder of how small even the biggest players were in the grand scheme of things. Perhaps when all the current players were disintegrated and nothing but dust under Gotham soil, the center would still be standing. In the midst of his musing, both Nico and Robert had arrived. They were both joking and laughing amongst themselves. Luckily, neither Nico nor Robert had seen Tim zoning out. That was one benefit to being so mysterious. People didn't know when he was or wasn't listening. Robert joked, "Can't die here tonight. Got a drink waiting for me at the bar on 6th Street, you know." Nico's face lit up. "Care to bet on it, Robbie?" Robert's face screwed up. "Do I gotta bet on my life now?" Tim's attention was drawn to the conversation, and he couldn't help but sharply rebuke. "Don't we do that every day, Robert?" Robert mumbled an apology, but Nico looked at him considerably. Shit. He had been too fast in that, too condescending, or God forbid, emotional? No time to cry over the spilled blood. Emilio Vasari was here. He was flanked by his usual retinue of muscle. His right hand, a hulking brute named Troy, stood a half step ahead, his hand hovering near a concealed holster. Emilio himself watched him approach, a smug, contemptuous smirk playing on his lips. But he didn't look well. His eyes were bloodshot, his skin waxy and pale, and his clothes wrinkled. For all he acted confident, Emilio was suffering the consequences of not having the real neutrality and support. Nico appeared at Tim's right side like a shadow, and didn't miss a beat. He sounded forward, a casual, almost lazy grace to his movements, and stopped directly in front of Troy. "Afternoon, fellas," Nico drawled, his voice pitched just loud enough to carry. "Neutral grounds, huh? Means we all play fair. No surprises." Robert smirked too, but unlike Nico, it was reckless. He stood on Tim's left and stared down Troy. Troy, predictably, bristled. What are you implying, kid? Implying? Nico's smile was innocent, almost angelic. Nothing, just being neighborly. With a sudden, swift motion, too fast for Troy to even react, Nico patted him down. His hands moved with practiced efficiency, locking and disarming two hidden knives, a small pistol, and a set of brass knuckles before Troy even registered what was happening. Nico then spun the pistol on his finger, flinging into his palm. See? No surprises. He tossed the weapons onto a nearby overturned crate with a clatter. We'll hold onto these for safekeeping, of course. Versailles' eyes narrowed, but he said nothing. His gaze fixed on Tim. It was a test, and Nico, as always, had passed. As Robert patted down Versailles and Troy patted down Nico, Versailles made idle talk about how some bars in East and were serving watered down drinks, and even about Gotham's gloomy weather. He didn't seem the last bit bothered by the fact that Tim wasn't even responding, and continued to prattle until Robert stepped back with a curt "Clear." Tim finally stepped forward, stopping a respectful but calculating distance from the Versailles. He didn't offer a handshake. He didn't offer any response. His face was a blank stare, his eyes cold and unwavering. "Emilio," Tim began, his voice calm, clear, resonating slightly in the vast space. "We need to talk about your future." Percy scoffed, a dry, rasping sound that echoed through the building. "My future is just fine, kid. It involves taking back what Falcon thinks is his, and taking shit from the Marlins too. And then some. You came here to ask for a cut, or are you finally ready to pick a side?" "Neither," Tim said, and the single word was a deliberate bow cutting through the mob boss bluster. "I came here to offer you an out. An option to opt out of the final war." Mercedes' smirk vanished, replaced by a flicker of confusion, then outright amusement. He threw his head back and laughed, a loud, grating sound that bounced off the steel grinders, full of contempt and disbelief. "Opt out from a mob war, from my family? You think it's that simple, boy? You think I can just walk away from 50 years of blood and loyalty?" He leaned forward, his voice dripping with malice. "And where would I go? To the suburbs? To a nice little house with a pickled cents like some honest fool?" "Flee, Gotham," Tim stated, his voice utterly devoid of emotions. He was prepared for this. The first lesson of lying to others was to believe it yourself. He was confident. "Take your whole family, every last connection, disappear. Take what you have and never look back, because if you stay, you'll die. And you will take a lot of innocent people with you." The laughter died on Versailles' lips. His eyes hardened, glinting with a dangerous light. "You got a lot of nerve, boy. Too much, maybe." He gestured subtly with his chin. "You think you're untouchable, don't you? You're new to this shit. You'll never survive the true war, boy. You think you're a ghost, a corpse? Well, you should know what we do about bodies and ghosts." Tim didn't flinch. He knew what was coming. He always knew. He prepared for it. This was Gotham. this was how it worked. Still, the image of himself drowning in Gotham Bay, cinder blocks on his feet, or cut up and put into different dumpsters across the alley, his heart pinned to the wall of Commissioner's garden office, fostered a sense of unease in him. I have men positioned, Vasily snarled, his voice low but carrying clearly in the silence. Snipers, police officers, well played, playing soldier for me. They got you in their sights right now. One word from me, and you're staying on this concrete. Nicola, standing a few feet behind him, shifted almost imperceptibly. Tim felt the subtle tension in the air, the familiar thump of danger. He trusted Nico. Troy looked nervous. No matter, Tim didn't care. Nico was at his best in a fight, and in any scenario, he could be trusted to support Tim. Tim remained perfectly still, his gaze locked on Versailles. He could almost feel the laser dot on his chest, cold and precise. Could feel the bullet slicing through the bone and flesh and sincere. He had this. Focus. Emilio raised his hand, a cruel smile stretching his lips. Shoot him, Redding. Show this little bastard what happened when he crossed the Versailles name. The crack of a rifle shot ripped through the air, deafening in the enclosed space. The sound reverberated, loud and sharp, but it wasn't aimed at them. The bullet slammed into Robert's gut. He screamed and fell to the floor, clutching his stomach, his knees cracking as the cold cement. Emilio froze, his face paling, his eyes darting frantically towards the shadows in the rafters above. Confusion, the gnawing fear flickered across his features. Tim finally spoke, his voice quiet, almost conversational, yet it carried more weight than any gunshot. Officer Daniel Redding, isn't it? His gaze was fixed on Versailles, but his words were for the unseen sniper. A shame to see such a promising career end in a dirty, dry dock. Unless, of course, you remember this agreement we have. This little secret in a 10-star apartment in Brunley. Emilio's jaw worked, but no sounds came out. Troy looked around nervously, eyes wide, searching the shadow for the betrayer. You see, Emilio, Tim continued, his voice still unnerving calm somehow. You pay your men in paper and coins. I pay the salaries of most of Gotham in ways far more bending than paper currency. I have an extensive roster, you should know, and unlike you, when I call, they answer. Every single time. Perseid finally moved. With a gutter roar he lunged, pulling a small nickel-placed revolver from inside his jacket. He leveled it at Tim's chest, the barrel a dark, menacing hole. Oh, Robbie, Nico sighed, sending a mournful look at the boy on the concrete. Robert was the one who had searched Emilio for weapons. He was a traitor to a steadily growing faction in the war. And somehow, Tim had found out. You arrogant little bastard, Emilio hissed, his fingers tightening on the trigger. You think you can just walk in here and dismantle everything I built? I will pull your smuggler head out. Tim didn't even blink. Instead, with a slow, deliberate movement that defied all logic and every survival instinct that his body screamed at him, he walked forward, directly into the path of the gun. The cold matte steel of the barrel pressed against his chest, right over his sternum, cold and undeniable. He could feel the faint tremor in Vercelli's hand, the immense panic. Nico, standing rigid behind him, finally broke the silence. "Boss!" His voice was low. There was no way Vercelli could be stopped before he pulled the trigger. Tim looked Emilia Vercelli in the eye and leaned forward enough to feel the barrel of the gun digging comfortably into his chest. "I am a man of my word, Vercelli. Are you one of yours?" The fucking cliffhanger. Oh my god, what the fuck? There's no more chapters for now. We gotta wait. Oh god. Well, have a nice night or day or whatever you have. Stay hydrated. And we'll hear you later.